you consider yourself a natural problem solver? Do you enjoy the thrill of coming up with solutions to solve pain points? And does your boss or colleagues at work consider you an asset in this regard? Do you leap at the opportunity to infuse innovation to solving the most pressing issues of the day around the office? Well, if you answered yes to any of the questions I posed to you just now, you're naturally becoming a coveted asset to those in senior leadership and beyond, while also demonstrating the value you bring in all facets of your workday. If you can solve more problems and create higher profits, then your boss should do everything they can to keep you. Which further buttresses and furthers the point written about in the Financial Post, which found among the soft skills that hiring managers deem important include a willingness to learn, 85%. Dependability comes in at 84%. Meanwhile, accountability and problem solving round out the top as we look at a total of 78% of employers and hiring managers who say they look for those qualities in all of their job applicants. My friend Kolby Goodman is someone who works with high leverage professionals such as doctors, dentists, attorneys, and CEOs to help them find and retain individuals to solve problems and reduce pain points in their operation. For more than a decade, Goodman has helped to optimize the hiring and onboarding process, helping more than 5,000 high achievers find the right fit or leave jobs that weren't aligned to what they were hoping for. Goodman has plenty of knowledge and nuggets of wisdom to share when it comes to the hiring and recruitment process, and he is now the current founder of a company known as Best Fit Now, where he partners with leaders to identify and resolve pain points relating to broken hiring practices and strategies, poor employee onboarding experiences, and high turnover, ensuring that you make the best first impression possible on both sides of the interview equation. And Goodman joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. If you're ready, I'll take a moment to welcome you to the program, my friend, and I'm super excited to talk to you all about putting people in the right roles to succeed, my friend. Great to see you, and happy San Diego Monday to you, my friend.
Thanks, Kevin. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Now, my friend, I know that you help high leverage professionals hire the right people to solve problems. So I'm wondering if we could start our conversation by you telling me about all the great work that you do, my friend, and what makes you so fabulous.
I think you might be giving me too much credit, Kevin, but I appreciate it. In my previous business had me help over 5,000 individuals find the jobs of their dreams. I was a career coach and career consultant, and got a lot of excitement and joy out of helping people find that right career path for them. Now, in doing all that great work and partnering with all these overachieving people, I found that a lot of companies, decision makers, and hire managers were not meeting my clients in the middle when it came to really positive and engaging hiring experiences. Interviews were lackluster, communication was really poor, ghosting was not an uncommon practice. And I said, all right, this needs to change. I think a lot of companies are maybe unconsciously or unintentionally driving away rock star talent, and it's time to make a change. And so I launched Best First Now to help leaders inside of companies level up their hiring game so that they can attract, identify, and retain top talent that isn't simply just qualified, but helps them solve their biggest problems and makes their lives easier.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kobe, I wanted to ask you about the whole notion of leaders having to sort of sell what a company offers. Oftentimes in a job interview, people have to sell themselves to a company, right? But wanted to inverse that and ask you about the importance of having companies really sell to the applicants they want to apply to the job. How important do you think that is?
Even in today and age where it's definitely an employer's market, you still want people to buy into what you do, right? And a lot of that is, yes, it is salary, it is benefits, it is monetary delivery of value, but it also has to be opportunity, right? You don't want somebody simply selling you their soul on a daily basis. And so where I find a lot of managers missing the mark is they don't see the interview and they don't anticipate the long-term relationship with the candidate to be one of a bilateral engagement, meaning I want you to come work for me, but this is why I think you should. And so selling the opportunity, selling the knowledge and the exposure, communicating, here are the challenges we need you to help us solve. That brings the conversation to a place, instead of being skewed in statuses, right, where it is the manager, the decision maker, the person holding all the cards, and the candidate. They feel really small, they feel really needy, right? And that can really make a candidate not feel super great about an interview, not feel super confident about joining a company. And so it's about evening out the statuses where it becomes a problem haver, which is the company, and a problem solver. And so by selling the company as an opportunity to learn, to do good work, and to be around good people is something that too many managers out there are really falling at, and I think are being beat out by their competition and are driving away good talent because there's no excitement about the long-term viability of the role that goes beyond, okay, here's a bi-monthly paycheck and a bonus at the end of
the year. Yeah, absolutely. And Kobe, what do you think it means to optimize your work and hiring experience? What does that mean to you?
So, hiring in the hiring process and talent acquisition hasn't had a lot of revolution beyond technology, right? There's the applicant tracking system, there's online applications, there's LinkedIn, there's Indeed, right? But everything else that goes around it hasn't really been evolved. And so where I go into my clients is help them optimize their communication. That starts off with, what does the job description look like, right? Are you talking about a laundry list of skill sets, experiences, hard requirements that you want a candidate to have to come in? Or are you explaining what are the problems you want them to solve? What challenges will they be approaching? How are you getting the candidate to get excited to apply for your role besides this is just another thing that I qualify for? And then beyond that is, how do you then reinforce your purpose of finding good talent through ideal problem solvers, through every interaction, every email, every interview conversation, offer negotiation, and even the onboarding process? Because I think what's happening a lot now is that companies are choosing people who they think are the most qualified, but they're not completing the equation. They're not furthering the conversation to see, well, how do those experiences, how do those skill sets benefit us as a company? And when that communication isn't had and is not optimized, then you have candidates who are missing the mark when they're hired. They're leaving before 6, 12, 18 months, and they're costing the company tens of thousands of dollars, not only in hiring and onboarding costs, but lost productivity, lost morale. And so if companies can more optimize this process and be more effective at the communication and the engagement, not only going to save themselves a ton of money, but they're going to make themselves a ton of money too, because that ideal person is going to produce way longer than somebody who's not a good fit.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, my friend, I know that you've worked and been featured on a national media outlets like CBS, the Huffington Post, and LinkedIn. My friend, you've also worked with some national brands as well, including Marriott Hotels and others, my friend. So tell me, how has your sort of national profile or the ability to share these messages on a national profile allowed you to reach more people and distribute your message, my friend? I'm curious to get your answer there.
Yeah. So I think the thing that I bring to these outlets and really resonates with their viewers, listeners, and readers is that I'm making it absolutely clear that these shortcomings in talent acquisition, these faults in hiring, these missteps in interviewing are not a manager's fault, right? We're not really trained on how to do a lot of this stuff. A lot of the times managers are onboarded not because they're good at the leadership part of it, but because they're good at the operational part of it, right? The software engineer is promoted to software manager because that person can solve. The accounting, expert is promoted into management because they're good at the books, right? And so it's about saying, hey, this is not your fault, but let's better you. Let's evolve your practice in leadership and team development so that you can be a better leader, you can have a happier team, so that you can make your life easier. And I think that's the big part of it is leadership is hard enough as it is, but if you're not supported, if you're not educated, if you're not trained, it's exponentially more difficult. And so I think by leveraging these larger platforms and these, coming into these companies to help their leaders, it makes people feel more empowered, more in control, and be more excited to lead versus depressed to go to work every day.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kolby, I'm curious to that point to get your definition of workplace inclusion, my friend, and how
Mm-hmm.
companies and leaders can use inclusion if they use it as a pillar of their organization as a competitive advantage. What are your thoughts there?
It's funny. I went to a networking event a couple of weeks ago here in San Diego, Kevin, and it had a diverse panel of leaders and founders of startups. And what they really hit home was that if you're not diversifying who people are, what they look like, and what they bring to the organization, that organization is on a fast track to failure and non-existence, right? The market is always evolving, right? Customers are always evolving. The needs and the wants of the market are never going to change. And so if all you're doing is hiring people who look the same, who think the same, who act the same, you are quickly down the road of irrelevancy. And so by really trumpeting and promoting a company's diversity, equity, and inclusion, making sure that all voices are heard, limiting the basic things like bias and exclusion. Really, what you're doing is you're inviting different voices into the room to help enhance your organization. And I think the companies who are welcoming that are seeing great gains, and those who are not prioritizing that are getting left in the dust.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, Kolby, I know that you work with leaders and company executives all the time so that they can have good intentions to keep good people. So how do you think well-intentioned leaders can really start up the exodus or the hemorrhaging of good people? What do you think is the key to retaining good people for high-level positions?
What I have found in helping 5,000 people leave their jobs is a vast majority of those had some part or all part of their disgruntledness about their previous employer centered in a lack of transparency and a lack of communication. They feel like they are simply just cogs in the machine because leadership is not clear about what is their involvement, what is their impact, how are they making a difference. And so if you as a leader are feeling like you're disconnected from your employees and your team, you need to start reprioritizing communication and asking direct questions like, hey, what do you think your impact is here? What do you want your impact to be here? How can I help you as your leader have a greater impact here? Right? I'm a big believer in servant leadership, where you as the leader are not there to dictate or to drive in a bad way your team, but you're there to help remove all of the roadblocks, all of the hurdles in your team's way so they can do their best work. The number one way and the quickest way to get clarity on what roadblocks they're having and what best work they want to do is simply by asking.
Yeah, absolutely. And Corey, what do you think it means to think outside of the box? Because, so often in the hiring process, managers have a checklist that they have to go through. But what do you think it means to really think outside of the box to really level up that organizational culture? What are your thoughts there?
It's a great question. I think first and foremost is to get rid of the saying, we do this the way we do this because it's always been done this way. Change and change management is super hard because people get set in their ways. And the companies that want to think outside the box and really make an impact and be a leader and be a disruptor, they come in with very little if no expectations about how things are supposed to be done. And so as leaders, that can be really scary. It's unpredictable, it's unproven, it's a high risk, right? But it's your job as leaders to cultivate a team who can help see that unproven vision through, not only through their technical abilities and skills, but also who they are as people, how they deal with resilience, how they deal with setbacks, how they deal with their own motivation and drive. And so I think the best way for companies to start thinking outside the box, again, is to start having communication with team members about how they see themselves as part of that innovation, right? Not only in how they can champion it, but what are some fears and concerns they have about, it happening? Are they going to feel left in the dust? I think it goes back to open communication, honesty, and vulnerability so that you can drive forward without anybody holding you back.
Yeah, and to that point, do you think vulnerability in the sense of really, for a lack of a better word, exposing leaders, and what I mean by exposing leaders is making sure that the people that they interview know that they're human and that they have faults of their own and they're not sort of this robotic leader that's just trying to get through an interview. So how important do you think vulnerability and authenticity are in the interviewing and recruiting process?
I think it's 1A and 1B in terms of importance in the process. It has to be, right? Because the number one complaint I hear from managers is that this person was a great interview, but they've been a really lackluster employee. And that's because the process has been extremely performative, right? The questions have been predictable. The job postings have been obvious. The answers given by the candidates have been what a manager wants to hear. And so if you can set forth a environment of vulnerability and authenticity, you're able to get real faster with a candidate and let them know we're not looking for somebody, we're not here to look for the most experienced or the most skilled, right? we're going to look for the good fit. We need the good fit because we want you to fit into this specific culture that we've developed, be a part of this team that we're proud of, and solve these problems that we're driven to address. And if all you're doing is being very surface level, being very closed off, being holding things close to the vest, you're inviting the same of your candidates and you're getting an incomplete picture of their compatibility. And so the more that you can be authentic, the more that you can be vulnerable, the more that you invite that into the interview process, and the clearer you're going to be on a candidate's fit, but also too, the more respect and the more engagement you're going to get from them so that they want to join your team. They're excited to be a part of the solution.
Yeah, absolutely. Colby, how do you look at workplace resilience? What do you think that means to you?
I mean, I think resilience, I think historically we've talked about resilience being the ability to withstand, right? To be ground down into nothing, but still be okay. But I think it's that resilience goes internally and externally. Meaning, what are the tools that a candidate or an employee comes to work with that helps them persevere, that helps them stay motivated, that allows them to, also disconnect healthily from problems, but also how are they externally? Are they asking for help? How are they asking for help? Are they admitting they don't know what they're doing? Right. And so it kind of goes back to our previous question about authenticity and vulnerability, right? Like I train my clients and their managers not how to find the person who always knows the right answer. I train them to find the person who has the courage to admit they don't know, and then the drive to go ahead and figure it out. And I think that should be the new universal definition of resiliency is admitting when you don't know, having that courage, having that vulnerability, and then wanting to build yourself up by figuring out the answer so that everybody wins. So you no longer are a burden to your team. So you're not running to your manager every time that there's a problem. And so the manager can then trust their team to face and overcome adversity, and then ideally spread that knowledge, spread those skills to the people around them.
Yeah, and Toby, I wanted to talk to you about optimizing strategy for human resources professionals because, you know, what I mean by that is I'm curious to get your thoughts on how important it is for leaders to really come with a defined strategy of execution during a interviewing process, and how do you think they can optimize that to recruit the best talent?
I think ultimately it's remembering that you're cultivating a dialogue and a partnership with candidates. Right? A lot of times people say, we have this job, we need you to do it. And that's kind of it. Like they almost look at working for them as a privilege. Right. And so I think it's about HR managers partnering with leaders in, doing the managing and saying, hey, like, what's missing here? What do we need? What problems do we need solved? I think that's kind of how it really boils down to. We need to stop looking at, okay, what do you need this person to do? Because I would argue, Kevin, if every job description online was 1,000% transparent, every job title would be professional meeting attendee and email responder. Right. And so we need to make sure that we're being transparent about what are the problems that we're trying to solve, why this candidate might be the right role, and looking at it again as this partnership, developing candidate relationships, leveraging an employer brand, and coming at this very human to human interaction just like that, as humans to humans. Because I think too often it is a lot of technology and data and analytics, and I think there's room for that. But I think in the age of the digital transformation, we've become over reliant on it, and we're dehumanizing people on both sides of the interview table throughout the process.
Today, my friend, is National Cerebral Palsy Awareness Day, and there are 17 million people across the world that have a cerebral palsy, my friend, and I am one of them. And I shared with you that I also help businesses amplify the hiring of folks with disabilities. And I will tell you, Kobe, that this is personally important to me because when I graduated college back in 2010, Kobe, so I went to school to become a sports reporter. And when I graduated college, I went on 10 job interviews to try and get a job as a journalist. And at the time, news directors looked at me and they said to me, Kevin, you have a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and we think you would be a great fit for the newsroom, but because of your disability, we can't put you out into the field because we uh, don't have enough resources to support your success here. So unfortunately, we can't hire you. So Kobe, when I graduated college, I spent 4 years as a volunteer reporter for a local television station, and I didn't get my first job until 6.5 years out of college. So this work is particularly meaningful for me. So I'm curious to know your perspective on the importance of infusing individuals with disabilities into the workforce. What are your thoughts there?
Oh, Kevin, that disheartens me to hear your story, man. I'm sorry you went through that, but I don't. Unfortunately, I don't think it's you're in a minority there. I think it's very um, common to hear what you went through, and I think it's so important for companies to find those resources, right? To include all voices, no matter what the ability or disability. I think it does a few things for them. One, it it shows the rest of the team that you don't have to look, act, talk, be, or have a certain history to succeed in an organization. So even if somebody is fully able-bodied but has a different background or comes from a disenfranchised population, they can see somebody like yourself succeeding and say, I can do that too. And so it brings this sense of hope, pride, and accomplishment to everybody else. And then also too, it provides this different perspective in terms of business, right? Companies are out there to make money and they're there to serve customers. And so if they aren't incorporating those of different abilities, backgrounds, um, histories in their organization, they're most likely missing the mark in serving customers who look just like these rejected candidates. And so I think it's extremely important to have a proactive diversity and inclusion practice. It's important to help managers get rid of preconceived biases or microaggressions that they're not even aware of so that the business grows. And the short-term complexity of bringing on a differently abled person is going to be completely minimized by the impact they can make on the bottom line, yes, with support for business, but also on the culture and the people that they're surrounded with on a daily basis in that workplace.
Yeah, and it also goes back to a decreasing turnover and poor customer experiences because um, uh, consumers want to support businesses that are inclusive. So let's talk about reducing turnover and sort of elevating those customer experiences because I know you spend a great deal of time helping business owners and CEOs eliminate those headaches, my friend. So, what do you think is the key there?
I mean, I think the key there, again, we talked about before, is making sure that there is a equal, everybody has a seat at the table, right? And I think, again, too often managers come in to interviews hiring how they were hired by their boss. And that boss is hired by how they were hired by their boss. So there's almost this generational trauma when it comes to interviewing. And you may be giving questions that were there in the 90s or the 80s, right? And so looking at your practice to say, am I asking questions? Am I building rapport? Am I making a connection in a way that I want to lead, right? Because if all you're doing is asking people for the right answers, you hire that person, they're going to only expect to bring you right answers. And so they're going to hide things from you. They're going to sweep it under the rug, and it's going to end up being a heck of a lot more painful for you in the long term. And so, like I said before, that authenticity and that vulnerability that you can extend in the conversation, make it so you're not just hiring somebody, but that expert whose help you need, who is that candidate, wants to forge a long-term relationship with you and want to partner with you to do great things versus simply just come to work, do the job to the minimal ability, and call it a day.
Yeah, and Kobe, you have brought up the whole idea of relationship building a couple of times, and I wanted to tie that into my next question in terms of retaining great employees. Do you think relationship building and relating to people is the key to retaining great employees? What are your thoughts there?
So we talked about before why people leave, right? And in my decade plus of doing career coaching, I helped a lot of people leave jobs. Secondly, I helped a lot of people leave a lot of bad managers. And a lot of that bad management came to a misunderstanding of gifts and skill sets, but also a misunderstanding of what an employee needed from a leader, right? One killer question that I coach my leaders to ask each one of their employees is to go to them and genuinely ask, how can I help you? And that question has been kind of neutered, so to speak, a lot. We're asked it quite a bit when we go into the grocery store, when we call our cell phone company, right? And it's part of this script. But if you can go to your team and ask them genuinely, how can I help you do your job better, do it quicker, do it easier, and they give you ideas and you can action on them, that employee is going to see you as a partner, as an asset, right? They know that you have their best interest in mind. And so the more that you can improve that communication and come to them as, again, that servant leader, looking to remove all the unnecessary headache and roadblocks from their day-to-day work so they can do their best work, that's going to retain your best people because they know that in order to leave you, they're going to hopefully find somebody just like you. But that's really hard to gauge in an interview. And so the risk of them leaving and finding an employer or a leader who doesn't do that as well as you do is going to be really high. And so to keep them, ask them those questions, be a partner with them, and help them as much as you can to keep them as long as you can.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kobe, as a professional speaker and the work that you do, I know that adding value is a big part of what you coach people to do, and in parts of your speeches as well, my friend. So I'm curious to ask you about how hiring the right people can help reduce the pain points that a business or organization or a company is experiencing. What are your thoughts there?
I mean, I would say, before you figure out of what you need to be do to relieve that pain point, you should figure out who can do it for you first, right? And historically, companies look for people to do a job, right? To check a box, to finish a task. But those who are finding themselves with higher profits, higher margins, happier customers, longer tenures of employees are looking to hire problem solvers. That's ultimately how we as consumers tend to make decisions, right? We buy the gum not because we want the gum, but because we want fresh breath. But we need to evolve the way we think about how we hire in the same thing. And so adding value is how you should be hiring, not to check a box, not to do a job. How can this person come in and make an impact, both on the bottom line, right? How can they help us make more money, save time, or reduce risk? That's the tangible things, but also the intangible things. How can they make our lives easier? How can they take away this work that I don't want to do? How can they be excited and passionate about doing work that you couldn't pay me $1 million an hour to do? And by using that approach and having that mindset, leaders and companies are better run and are more adept to changes in the marketplace at developing resiliency and coming out on top than those companies who simply just hire because somebody checks enough of the skills or experience boxes.
Yeah, and Kobe, I want to talk to you about career mobility, and what I mean by that
Okay.
is I know that you know that it's hard to find someone to stay at a job for 25 or 30 years. So I'm curious, from the employee and from their perspective, what is the key to sort of leveling up and maximizing their career potential and mobility? What are your thoughts there?
I think it ties directly back to what we just talked about in terms of value add, right? Too many candidates out there are looking for jobs and selling themselves based on, hey, I can do the job, you should hire me, right? But especially in a very crowded market like we're experiencing currently, when there's dozens, hundreds, thousands of people who are saying the exact same thing to the exact same hiring managers, you tend to get lost in the void. And so as you look to level up, as you look to make more money, have a bigger impact, have a better work-life balance, you are absolutely in your right to ask for all that value from your next employer. But first and foremost, you have to present the value first. So I think the number one key to understanding what your value is to go and research and ask. Go around right now, if you're currently employed, and figure out what is your impact to the bottom line? How are you supporting or empowering your teammates? Write that all down and take better ownership of that. Because your next employer is going to be willing to take a chance on you, be willing to give you more salary, better benefits, work from home. If you can prove to them that you can add all that value and more. So I think, to really sum it up there is if you want mobility, stop treating your work like you're completing a task and start identifying and quantifying the problems you solve and the positive outcomes due to those solutions.
Yeah, absolutely. And Kobe, my final question for you is how I end all of my podcasts, my friend. And it's about asking you about personal and professional legacy, my friend. And at the end of the day, how do you want that to be defined?
I love the question and I appreciate you asking. And it's definitely changed in the last few years now that I got married, bought a home, I have a kid. And so legacy is something I've really thought about. And I think, for me, the legacy that I started with my first company and I'm looking to continue with my second, as well as the husband I want to be and the father that I want to be, is really rooted in helping people achieve their greatest. And I think for me, that's through asking good questions, by not afraid of digging deep with people who want to go deep with me and reminding them of what they're capable of. And I think a lot of times, so often, myself included, I'm not immune to this, is that the little voice in our head is really good about telling us no, or that we're not good enough, or that we're not capable. And so if I can be an external voice to the right people to say, hey, like, you are good enough. Let's figure out why. What is the reality situation? Let's not worry about what's happening inside of your head. And so getting with these individuals and helping them achieve greatness, get out of their own way and achieve what they're meant to achieve. That's the legacy I want to live. And I want to continue to live. I think I have lived. I'm trying to live right now, and hopefully it'll continue until my last days.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally, my friend, tell me if people want to get connected with all the great work that you do, what's the most efficient way they can do that?
I appreciate that, Kevin. Best way to connect with me is going to be on LinkedIn. It's where I share all my content, videos, how-to articles. Whether you're looking to get hired, whether you're looking to hire, I have some content there that I hopefully will add some value to you and bring you some insight. My name is Kolby Goodman, Kolby Goodman on LinkedIn. I'm the only one, and hope to see you there. And if you do connect with me, let me know you heard me here on Kevin's podcast, and I'll definitely accept your connection request.
Fantastic. Well, my friend is someone who deeply cares about workplace inclusion and inclusivity, my friend. I thoroughly enjoyed this conversation. I want to thank you for moving the needle of progress forward in this regard and for agreeing to engage in conversation with me this afternoon. It's most appreciated.
Kevin, the pleasure is all mine, man. Thank you so much for having me on.